Before I start this story, I need to know something from you. Was I wrong to expose my sister, Sarah, in front of her entire engagement party for what she did to my little brother, Leo? The shame I felt on his behalf, the sheer white-hot fury, it still burns inside me even now months later. She always had this image of perfection, this curated life she built, and she tried to scrub every imperfection out of it, including the one person who looked up to her more than anyone else in the world. I'm asking you to listen to the whole story, all 20 years of it, and then tell me if I became the monster she always accused me of being, or if what I did was simply justice served cold. It all started the day Leo was born. My parents and I had been waiting for him, and when he arrived, we were ecstatic. But there were complications, and by the time he was a toddler, the doctors confirmed he had a mild form of cerebral palsy, which mainly affected his fine motor skills and occasionally his speech. He wasn't severely disabled. He could walk, talk, and was intellectually brilliant, but he had a noticeable limp, and sometimes when he was excited, he'd stutter or his hands would shake slightly. To me, he was just Leo, my funny, brilliant little brother, who could solve any puzzle and knew more about astrophysics at age 8 than I did as an adult. To Sarah, however, he quickly became an embarrassment, a stain on the perfect picture of our family that she was desperate to show the world. She was 3 years older than me and 5 years older than Leo, and she started distancing herself almost immediately. When we were kids, if friends came over, she'd instruct me, not ask, but instruct me to keep Leo upstairs. Tell them he's got a cold, she'd hiss, fixing her perfect blonde hair. I always stood up for him, always. I'd drag Leo downstairs, his hand slipping slightly in mine, and introduce him with a loud, defiant smile. But as she got older, and her social circle grew more critical and high status, her behavior became crueler, more calculated. She was obsessed with appearances. High school was a nightmare for her, because she worried her friends would see Leo being dropped off with us. She started driving, and suddenly, she was too busy to ever give him a ride, even if it meant he had to wait 45 minutes for my parents to get home. She'd say things under her breath, too, subtle digs disguised as concern. You know, if you just tried a little harder to walk straight, people wouldn't stare, Leo. Or, don't wave your hands so much, honey, it makes you look frantic. Leo, bless his heart, would just internalize it. He'd spend hours in his room, practicing his posture, holding his hands still, his face a mask of concentration and quiet hurt. It broke my heart to watch him try to make himself invisible just to appease a sister, who couldn't even see the incredible person he was. When Sarah went off to college, we all breathed a sigh of relief. The tension in the house eased. Leo flourished. He excelled in school, finally joined the debate team. His stuttering almost completely disappeared when he was passionate, and made friends who loved him for exactly who he was. He was happy. Sarah, meanwhile, was chasing the perfect life. She met Ethan, a man from an incredibly wealthy, old-money family, the kind that hosts charity galas and has their names on hospital wings. This was the pinnacle of Sarah's aspirations. She was ecstatic, and the rest of us were genuinely happy for her, until we realized what that meant for Leo. She came home for the holidays, and the first thing she did was take my parents aside. I was in the kitchen making tea, and I heard the low, urgent whispers. "Mom, Dad, you have to understand. Ethan doesn't know about Leo." I froze, the kettle handle slipping in my hand. My mother's voice was sharp, a rarity for her. "What are you talking about, Sarah? He doesn't know you have a brother?" "No, not exactly," Sarah replied, her voice strained. "He knows I have a brother, but I've told him Leo is overseas studying, doing a very specialized degree. I haven't mentioned his condition. Ethan's family is very traditional, very concerned with presentation. If they see the limp, the movements, I don't know if they'd approve. We're getting engaged soon. I can't risk this." My mother was furious, but my father, always the peacemaker, tried to reason with Sarah, but she was adamant. She begged, she cried, she played the victim, saying she was just trying to protect her future. They eventually, reluctantly, agreed to keep Leo out of the way for the engagement dinner, which was a small affair with only Ethan's immediate family. That dinner was terrible. Leo was upstairs, told to read quietly in his room. I kept glancing up the stairs, my stomach sick with guilt. Sarah was the picture of grace, spinning tales of her life, omitting Leo entirely. She and Ethan got engaged that night. I barely congratulated her. My parents tried to make it up to Leo the next day, showering him with love and gifts, but the damage was done. He was quiet, withdrawn, and refused to talk about it, which was a bad sign. Fast forward 6 months. The wedding planning was in full swing, and Sarah was planning a huge, lavish engagement party. A pre-wedding celebration to introduce her friends and all of Ethan's extended family to her world. And this time, she couldn't just lock Leo in his room. This was a big deal. The guest list was massive, over 300 people, held at a beautiful country club. My parents insisted, absolutely insisted, that Leo had to be there. He was her brother. Sarah threw an absolute fit. I remember her screaming at my parents in the living room, her face red with rage. He is not coming. He'll ruin everything. His shaking, his limp. It'll be a distraction, a spectacle. I will not have my moment tainted by his disability. I walked in just as she said it, and the look of sheer revulsion on her face as she spoke about her own brother made my blood run cold. Leo had been listening from the hall. He just stood there, his back straight, his eyes dead. He turned around and walked back to his room without a word. That was the turning point for me. Seeing the look on his face, the realization that his own sister viewed him as a contamination. I knew I couldn't just let it go this time. My parents were distraught. They tried to tell Sarah that she was being cruel, but she simply dismissed their concerns, saying they were being overdramatic. She decided Leo could attend, but with strict, humiliating conditions. He was to sit in a quiet corner table, far from the head table, and was explicitly told not to leave his seat, not to mingle, and absolutely not to speak to Ethan's family unless they addressed him first. Sarah assigned me the task of being his handler, a term I still hate. She said, "Make sure he doesn't draw any unnecessary attention. Just keep him subdued." I agreed, but I agreed with a plan forming in my mind. A plan so audacious, so public, that it would ensure Sarah's secret, and her shame, would be laid bare for everyone to see. I had to do it for Leo. I spent the next few weeks trying to talk myself out of it. Was I truly capable of ruining my sister's most important night? But then I'd look at Leo, who was now just going through the motions, a quiet shadow, and I knew I had to. He deserved a sister who was proud of him, not one who hid him like a dirty secret. The day of the party arrived. Leo was miserable, wearing a suit that looked too formal for his slump. He looked like a puppet on a string. Sarah, on the other hand, was glowing, the perfect princess in a designer gown, beaming at Ethan's family. The room was gorgeous, filled with hundreds of well-dressed, influential people. The atmosphere was thick with money and expectation. I sat with Leo at our lonely little table by the patio door, far away from the action. I kept telling him he looked handsome, but his eyes were empty. He just nodded. Then came the speeches. My father gave a beautiful, heartfelt toast. Then Ethan's father, followed by Sarah's best friend, all praising Sarah's perfection, her ambition, and her kind heart. Each word felt like a lie, a stone pressing down on my chest. Finally, it was my turn. Sarah hadn't wanted me to speak, but my parents insisted, saying it would look weird if the other sibling didn't give a toast. I walked up to the microphone, my heart hammering a chaotic rhythm against my ribs. I looked out at the sea of faces, then at Sarah, who was giving me a tight, warning smile. And then finally, I looked over at Leo sitting alone staring at his hands. That was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't revenge, it was an unveiling. So that's the situation I was in. Looking at my sister about to sail off into a life built on a lie. A life that excluded the best person I know. I had the microphone in my hand, and I had to make a choice. Protect her fragile, perfect illusion, or tear it down to protect the honor of my brother. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause this video and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have risked everything to speak the truth? I truly want to know. I took a deep breath. The music had faded, and the room was silent, waiting. To Sarah and Ethan, I began, my voice clear, but trembling slightly. It's wonderful to see so many people here tonight, celebrating the start of their life together. I raised my glass. Before I toast the happy couple, I want to share a little story about my sister. She's always been driven, always known exactly what she wants, and she's worked incredibly hard to get it. She is, to put it simply, a master of presentation. A few people chuckled politely, including Sarah, who looked relieved. I continued, but what you see here tonight, this perfect picture, it's not the full story. It's only half of the story. You see, I have 2 siblings. I have Sarah, and I have my younger brother, Leo. I gestured toward the far table. Every head in the room, including Sarah's, swiveled to look at Leo. He visibly shrunk in his chair. Sarah's eyes were wide, panicked, and she started mouthing, "Stop it." But I ignored her. "Leo," I said, my voice gaining strength and conviction, "is the smartest, kindest, most empathetic person I know. He has a brilliant mind and a heart of gold. He also has cerebral palsy. He has a slight limp, and sometimes his hands shake when he gets nervous." I kept my eyes fixed on Sarah, who was now standing up, her hand outstretched as if she could physically pull the words back into my throat. And for months, Sarah has actively hidden Leo from Ethan and his family. She told them he was overseas. She told my parents to keep him quiet tonight. She told me to make sure he didn't draw unnecessary attention, because she was afraid his disability, his very existence, would taint her perfect moment. The silence in the room was absolute, deafening. You could hear the intake of breath from 300 people. Ethan's entire family looked shell-shocked. Ethan himself just looked utterly bewildered, glancing from Sarah's furious, pleading face to my calm, resolute one. "Sarah, I love you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but cutting through the silence. "But I cannot stand here and toast a version of you that is so ashamed of the blood that runs through your veins. A life built on shame and lies, where you hide your own brother like a dirty secret, is a life that's already broken. You told my parents he would ruin everything. Well, I'm sorry, but I couldn't let you hurt him anymore." I looked directly at Ethan. "Ethan, you deserve to know the real woman you're marrying, not the perfect mask she wears." I then turned back to the crowd, my voice booming for the final line. "So, I will toast to the end of secrets, and to the hope that one day, my sister can learn to love her whole family, flaws and all. To Leo, the best of us." I raised the glass and took a defiant sip, then placed the microphone down. The aftermath was chaos. Sarah screamed. She actually shrieked, a high-pitched, hysterical sound, and then she lunged at me. My father stopped her just in time, pulling her away. Ethan's mother immediately grabbed Ethan's arm and whispered fiercely to him, pulling him away from the head table. The party essentially imploded. People started gathering their coats, whispering furiously into their phones. Sarah was dragged from the room by my parents, sobbing and shouting obscenities at me. I stood there shaking, but I didn't regret it. I walked straight over to Leo. He was crying, silent, heavy tears, but when he saw me, he looked up and whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." I put my arm around his shoulder, and as we walked out, I saw Ethan watching us, his face a mask of disappointment, confusion, and dawning horror. The engagement was called off within 48 hours. Ethan's family, that traditional, high-status family Sarah was so desperate to impress, was not concerned with Leo's disability. They were appalled by Sarah's deception and her cruelty. They told Ethan that a person who could be so actively cruel and manipulative to her own family was not a trustworthy partner. Sarah blamed me entirely. She refused to speak to me, and for a while, she refused to speak to our parents, claiming they sided with me. She moved out and tried to spin the story to her friends, saying I was jealous and unstable. But the core truth was out. She was ashamed of her brother. Her perfect image was shattered, and she was forced to start over, but this time, without the lie. As for Leo, for the first time in his life, he felt defended. It wasn't just a private conversation anymore. He saw his sister face the public consequence of her actions, and it allowed him to finally start healing from 2 decades of subtle, constant rejection. He's thriving now, applying to grad schools, and he walks with more confidence than I've ever seen. The emotional weight that Sarah placed on him is finally starting to lift. So I lost my sister, maybe forever, and I became the villain in her narrative. But I saved my brother, and I saved Ethan from a dishonest marriage, and ultimately, I upheld the truth. If you ask me now, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I chose my brother's dignity over my sister's vanity. That night was a disaster, but it was a necessary one. Think about this. Would you prefer a peaceful lie or a disruptive truth? I choose the truth every time. Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this where I explore the dark corners of family drama. And share your final, unedited thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section. I'll see you all in the next story.